Hi, I'm Dr. Rashmi Kulkarni, co-founder of Arnagenext Solutions, a microbiome-based resource platform that provides digital courses for students and professionals in the fields of life sciences, nutrition, and medicine. A microbiome app, which is called Microbiome Superhero, for children to develop healthy habits for a healthier lifestyle. We also do outreach and webinars for a wide range of audience, and we have research related to the gut microbiome. There's also our unique Shatayushi 360 degrees total transformation program for lifestyle diseases. So, this podcast that we have started is getting a very interesting turn today. We have an amazing speaker. Our guest today is Dr. Abhay Chopra. So, welcome, Abhay. And the
Hi.
amazing thing about him, I would like to say, is he's a gastroenterology surgeon based in the UK. He's a healthcare innovator and educator. So I am very, very excited for this conversation today for the podcast because we try to bring about, we are always talking about the microbiome, and it's from a microbiologist perspective that I talk about. So we want to look at the other spectrum. We want to know what the doctors think. And we just had an amazing conversation about your journey from being a gastroenterologist to somebody who knows a lot more and uses the information about the gut microbiome now. So we would love to hear about that transition.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. So let me summarize what you just mentioned. That I started my journey as a young surgeon who used to absolutely dread the idea of bacteria in the gut as a dangerous, deadly enemy that was killing my patients. To a complete turnaround, I'm now realizing that the human microbiome is one of the most essential components, and eliminating the microbiome is probably the worst thing we can do for our patients. So it's very interesting. This has been an evolution which really has been quite eye opening. When I did my research about the microbiome, I've realized that though we had recognized the presence of bacteria in almost 1600s when Leonov got his microscope, for the next 200 years, we've just considered the bacteria as our enemy. No one ever thought that the bacteria can do you any good. And I still remember we were taught that your gut has a lot of bacteria and they're just commensals, which means they just exist. They're not really doing anything for you. And there are a few bacteria which are symbiotic. So we grew up with the idea that ideally I just need to be hygienic. I'm going to wash everything till all the bacteria are destroyed. And I'll give you a very interesting thing that we used to starve our patients in my early journey of doing GI surgery. We used to go, give them antibiotics for at least a day or 2 days before surgery to cleanse your gut of all the bacteria. But we perceived them as enemy. And we used to starve our patients for at least 5 to 6 days after surgery so that we don't stimulate the gut. Today, it's completely the reverse. We definitely don't use any antibiotics. We feed as early as we can because we want to maintain the gut flora. And believe me, the results are so much better for our understanding about a microbiome. So I'd be very, very keen to answer whatever questions you want to throw at me. But as I said, I'm a complete convert, a surgeon who actually started his journey from one end of the spectrum to someone else who now actually looks at his diseases. And I very commonly counsel my patients about the benefits of gut bacteria.
It's really amazing to hear that, Dr. Chopra. See, because as a microbiologist, I was trained as a microbiologist, and the way I thought of microorganisms was completely different from what a doctor's perspective was. So, as a child, when I was prescribed so many antibiotics, that was even before I was trained to be a microbiologist. I used to think that this cannot be the right thing, that so many prescriptions of antibiotics, so many supplements, so why is this the medicine? I always felt that. And when I got my training in microbiology, at that time it really hit me that that was wrong. It felt wrong as a child, it felt wrong after learning this, and now that we are working more and more into this, so the journey that you just mentioned is so amazing to see the kind of misconceptions that everybody has. Everybody still has those misconceptions. I am very glad to hear about your journey, that you are here as a surgeon with such an open mind about the research going on, and you are applying all of these modern techniques and whatever you know of about the gut microbiome in your treatment. So just wanted to know how different it is now treating patients. How are they recovering? What is it that you see in your patient? What is the importance rather of the gut microbiome in our overall health?
So, Rashmi, it's been a very interesting journey, and let me put it this way. This was because when we started the field of microbiology, we initially only focused on pathogens.
Yes.
And I still remember my microbiology curriculum was exclusively about bacteria that cause problems. I
Yes.
have not learned about any single bacterium that was good for you, not one. We learned about parasites, we learned about everything that's going to harm you. So the concept in your mind as a medical student in the 1980s was, hang on, we really don't need all these creepy crawlies, as we used to call them.
Yes.
Uh, it took us a while, and it was in the late 90s that people started realizing a very interesting phenomenon. And the phenomena was that a lot of youngsters were developing inflammatory bowel disease. Someone did a very interesting observation, and they said, the cleaner the country, the more likely you are likely to get ulcerative colitis. And that was kind of
Yes.
it stuck in our head as to why hygiene is supposed to be good. Some brave people did some very interesting experiments, and they said it is because the parasitic load on the gut is really useful to develop your immunity. And I remember in the 1990s, I saw a paper where we started reintroducing eggs of your whipworm or threadworm inside the gut.
Wow.
Completely a 360 turn from eliminating worms to now reintroducing the eggs so that we can actually have worms in the gut. The results were surprising. This were early days when we started realizing the beneficial effects of the gut microflora. Today, if you ask me, the microbiome is actually has three major medical benefits to the human body, as I see it. One obviously is your nutrition and digestion. Do you know that if I actually cleanse your gut, you start malabsorbing? That a lot of your essential nutrients are only absorbed because there are bacteria in the gut.
Amazing.
We used to think that only the large intestine has bacteria. That also changed. We started realizing that that is not true, and the whole gut is full of bacteria. I remember the first estimates that I was taught when I started looking at the microbiome was, we've got the same number of microbiome or bacteria in our gut as the stars in the universe. Luckily, they changed that figure a little bit more recently. Now we say 38 trillion problem. So the number was revised by a factor of 100, but we still know that there are a lot of bacteria. The second role that they play, and this is something that a lot of medical community is not aware, is the role in immunity. The gut microbiome decides your ability to fight diseases. Your
Amazing.
gut microbiome decides on how healthy or active you're going to be. A lot of your chronic diseases are now tied up to changes in your microbiome related to age. Because we know with age, the gut slows down, it slows down,
Yes.
the flora changes, the immunity changes, and that really affects you. And that is why activity or exercise and fitness maintains the gut mobility. The gut mobility allows you to maintain your flora and you stay active and healthy. And it's amazing. I'm telling you, if you even today ask people what is the biggest contributor to immunity, we might say the bone marrow or the liver. Actually, it's the gut. And the third is even more bizarre, which I'm sure you know, Rashmi. I've looked at what you've published. But the gut brain axis. In other words, you think what you eat. And I was taught this as a
Okay.
young boy. We were taught about ahar, tamasi ahar, and sattvic ahar. I completely thought that was humbug. You know. Now I'm the complete opposite, and I'm saying no, no. What you eat is going to influence your mood, your mental health, how you're going to feel. And in fact, I'm sure you're aware that Jeffrey Gordon got a Nobel Prize a few years ago. He's done a lot of work on this particular area. And he proved that actually your body is a well oiled ecosystem. It's not a human being. It is
Yes.
not just us and our body and our organs that are important. We have to be in balance with our inside as well, right?
Yes.
So quite a drastic change. And the reasons as a GI person I got involved, because we're starting to see a trend. In India, I almost had never heard the word irritable bowel. Or you might say people are poor, they just ignore. I don't think that's true. Because the more affluent you get in India, you get irritable bowel. But in the West,
Interesting.
it's the commonest problem. And do you know what we attribute it to? We call it irritable bowel syndrome because we can't figure out a cause. We say it's
Yes.
functional.
Yes.
I promise you the word functional now has to be microbiome related. We almost are sure that all the so-called functional problems like your reflux, dyspepsia, IBS
Yes.
are directly related to what's inside your gut.
Yes. Absolutely.
The second big area which really interests people like me is inflammation of the bowel. Now, in the past, I was taught that IBD is related to your arthropathies. It's related to iris problems. So we were looking at a polysystemic kind of a presentation. Question was how? There has to be a common trigger that is somehow triggering everything. I can understand if I get inflammation in the gut, but then why the eye? Why the joints? Then we started saying it's immune related.
Yes.
Now we can tell you with a lot of confidence, yes, that immunity is regulated by your microbiome.
Yes.
And one of the most beneficial things you can do is give them pre and probiotics. Try to normalize their gut flora, and it keeps the disease at bay. Now, the same thing is extended to a lot of chronic diseases. So, you'd be surprised arthritis,
Yes.
the erosion of the joints, heart disease, cancer prevalence, mental health, all have been linked to changes in your flora. And there is definite evidence now that if you can manage your human gut flora or your own microbiome, you can manage a lot of these conditions a lot more effectively. So that's kind of my monologue about how I perceive the human microbiome. It's not necessarily just an academic interest, it's something that I actually therapeutically involve and use in my day to day practice.
That is really amazing to hear, and I'm so happy. I'm sure everybody in the audience is as well, because I know for sure that you are one of the early adapters. Not many people know about it, not many people use it in the treatment, and it is amazing that you are already using it. You have seen the results based on the changes you have made as to what immunity is, and it is really amazing to see that kind of a transformation.
Rashmi, let me tell you how I evolved. It's a very interesting way, and people will realize why I'm a convert. So I started my journey in almost 1999 when I was at Middlesex Hospital working with a pancreatic unit. And we used to get a lot of patients with severe pancreatitis. It's a very lethal condition. Once you are actually having severe pancreatitis, it's a very high mortality condition. And interestingly, we had a visiting professor who was visiting us from Uppsala University in Sweden. And he had started work on probiotics, and he was convinced that probiotics is a way to try to salvage these patients. And we were very skeptical, but he actually collaborated with our unit. And you'd be surprised, we started seeing some amazing things, saying, hang on. Then I started looking at it, and the other category of people where there was a very high mortality was people who had burns. And they realized that if you start feeding a burns patient with enteral nutrition early, it reduces his death. Completely counter to the way we used to think. Because before that, the thinking was he's leaking the bacteria from his gut, and now he's going to die because of sepsis. but re-establishing the gut microbiome barrier, as we now call it, because you really don't want the bacteria to go in, but you want them to be there. That fast forward a few years ahead, and we started talking about early recovery protocols after colonic surgery. And it was about not starving the patient, feeding them within 6 hours after surgery, ambulating them. And we started joining the dots. We started realizing that, hang on, all the thoughts that we had about our own, internal bacteria is completely wrong. We only had focused on pathogens, but they don't even represent 1% of the total flora, not even 1%. It's supposed to be a minuscule fragment. So it's like saying if I find one terrorist in India, that makes India a terrorist country. That's not true.
Yes.
And now we
Yes.
realize that. Now we realize that we have to focus on the 99.9%. And the 99.9% prevent that 1% from ever raising their ugly head.
Absolutely.
So very interesting. So that evolution happened over a period of time. It wasn't one
Amazing.
day.
What an amazing, yes, story. I am so glad to hear this because, whenever we do our outreach programs for the layman audience or any kind of audience, when we try to make people aware about the gut microbiome and, that we need to preserve it, we need to improve it in order to prevent chronic diseases, prevent recurrent infections, allergies, even several forms of cancer, and get the most of out of what we eat, get even more nutrition from the same foods. We get a lot of resistance. That is because we are constantly being bombarded by information that we need to kill microorganisms all the time, and this leads to everybody leading a very clean, very sterile life. So we just wanted to know, I'm sure everybody would be interested to know as to, I don't remember maybe 2 decades ago that it was so common for people to go to a gastroenterologist, but if we think about it now, what are the kind of patients you are seeing? What is the age group that comes to you? How has that changed over the last decade or so?
You asked me one of the trickiest and most difficult questions: hygiene. Now, even today, I'll tell you, I can't ever get myself to the idea that I don't need hygiene. Of course, I need hygiene. The challenge lies as to what is adequate hygiene. Do I have to really scrub everything, kill every bacteria, every living organism available? And the answer is to that a pretty big no. You can't even achieve it. But of course, you shouldn't even try to do it. Now, there was a very interesting thing that the natural living. So we need to understand something about our own evolution to understand what is hygiene for a human. Humans have evolved with nature. We didn't fall out of an alien spaceship and started ruling this planet. And we adapted ourselves to everything around us, which is why you'll see that people who live closely to nature usually have no diseases. They might eat only raw stuff, and you'll say, "What? Hang on, you're not getting any source of vitamin K or vitamin B12." And they say, "No, we're fine." So the bodies have adapted to their local milieu. But what has happened is the human mobility has been one of the factors. We've moved away from nature. We've created very artificial comfort zones for ourselves. That makes it very tricky. But you asked me a very direct question as to what conditions am I seeing more and more. And I'll
What
come back.
conditions and what are the age groups that you are seeing now?
Oh, younger and younger people, I'll tell you. It was I don't remember that I was aware of peanut allergy as a child.
Yes.
It's a lethal condition that I'm now very well aware of in UK, US. Hang on, how do you become allergic to something like peanuts? And why did I never see it in India? It was all to do with the fact that the Indian ecosystem introduced food a lot earlier. In India, a baby is weaned off breast milk as early as 3 to 4 months. And the mother creates that little khichdi in a wati and starts feeding the child. That was tradition. Do you know what that really was? Maturing your immunity. That's the exact age at which the passive immunity is getting regressed and the active immunity is coming in. We didn't know this. We actually had just assumed that that's how it works. In the Western thought, thinking it was that no, you can't introduce a child till very late. And that's why you see milk allergies, lactose intolerance, food intolerance. Because when your immune system is maturing, it's getting the transition, that's when you need to introduce them to the right kind of allergen. So they'll know that this is normal, right? The other very big area where I'm seeing a huge increase is colitis. Colitis used to be a very small fraction. I'm seeing more and more people under 15, 16 who are coming with severe disease. And the interesting part is they usually all come from very good backgrounds, which means hygiene was really taken care of. So the feeling, and again, as I told you that this was proven with experiments where we had to reintroduce parasites to control the colitis, that we know that the human microbiome and its elimination is a huge one. Now the question is, how do we develop our microbiome? It's a billion-dollar question. And your human microbiome is not a one-time entity. It's not something like I took a capsule, my microbiome is. It's a dynamic life system that is completely influenced by three things. And it influences three things as well. Your diet. So what you eat is going to be a substrate for the bacteria, and based on what you're eating, some will actually find that food right and they'll probably prosper. Some will find it hard and they will disappear. So the balance of your microbiome will be entirely dependent on you what you eat. Second is activity. I had this question as to why do people with the exact same activity, one is thin and the other is not. And we used to say it's down to your metabolic rate. Your metabolic rate is decided by your microbiome, right? It is not a blunt science.
Yes.
And the third and the most important thing that we've not realized, and we are slowly realizing, is even your own mental health affects your gut and vice versa. So it's a balance. If I feel good, I eat better, my microbiome is better. If I don't eat the right food, my microbiome gets affected, I'm depressed, I might be agitated. I eat the wrong food, the cycle persists. So when you talk about mindfulness, meditation, yoga, these all actually have very, very positive influence on your body. At this point, I'm not sounding like a allopath at all. I'm sounding very much like a homeopath or an Ayurvedic specialist. But the fact remains that all these pathies have slowly started realizing that they're all talking about the same thing. They're just trying to approach it in a different way. So when homeopathy says we'll just try to modify your immunity, or Ayurveda says no, you have to take herbal components to balance anything into your body. It's the same thing as I learned in allopathy. But a convergence is happening with time, understanding, and effort. And I would like to salute people like yourself, Rashmi, and I'll tell you why. The knowledge that you learn as being a microbiologist is slowly allowing us as clinicians to use it and apply it for getting people to take control of their own lives. So, human microbiome as an entity, I mean, it's not an entity, it's your actually identity. Your microbiome is going to decide how you look, how you feel, how you talk. So, we will go back to something we learn in India. This was when someone had asked Lord Brahma, who is Brahma? His answer was Aham Brahmasami. So I am Brahma and Brahma is me. Right? So what it essentially means is you are your own universe and the universe is you. What you see around you is influenced by what you do inside you, what you perceive from others. That's too deep a philosophical thing, but even from a medical perspective, I'll say that medicines, antibiotics, be very careful about these additions. Yes, they are very helpful in certain scenarios. I would definitely say they should. I'm not of the opinion that they have to be eliminated. No, nothing of that sort. But they have to be used with the right thought in your mind. You have to ensure that you're not creating a long-term problem for a short-term solution.
Absolutely.
And I kind of curtail my enthusiasm about microbiomes at this point. And
No,
I'll give
no,
you
that was really interesting. That was really interesting. And we need that because, antibiotics have their place. They have to be used where they are necessary. But a lot of people take it, self-prescription is very common. People just take antibiotics because they have it. And I think we need to increase this awareness to, get people scared about it. It is our invisible organ. We are talking about an organ that people are not aware about. The microbiome is our invisible organ. So if we talk about like inflammation in the gut, it is also very strongly linked to the oral microbiome. Heart disease is linked to the oral microbiome. How many times do people actually go for dental cleaning or take care of their oral health? It's just something that people don't know of. So if we increase this awareness and doctors like you who are early adapters, I am so happy to hear about this journey that you had and the knowledge that you are using for your patients and the kind of change that you have made in the outcomes for patients is just amazing to see. And really, we would love to take discussions like this further, talking about specific diseases if you know something comes up. So I think irritable bowel disease is one such issue or problem, health issue that many people are facing. So I think that would be an interesting topic to address in the next podcast if we can specifically focus on that
No,
one.
I completely agree with Rashmi. I'll just, as a final concluding statement, I'll tell you, we really need to start increasing awareness on a public level, especially to the caregivers. We have to demystify the human microbiome. Right now, there's a lot of mystique around the world microbiome. We have to start talking about, hang on, it's as simple as eating an apple a day. Do you know why? The apple substrate is very good for bacteria that actually, because it's an acidic milieu.
Yes,
And again, like I said, it wasn't some aphorism which just happened on its own, except no one explained the science. So I'll say, listen, we have to talk a lot about how diet influences us. We have to demystify the word microbiome. And the most important part is we have to take the right education to every caregiver so we can help people in situations where they are actually struggling to cope with their own health condition achieve the right outcome.
absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much for this wonderful explanation about the gut microbiome, your journey from being a gastroenterologist surgeon to somebody who is using the gut microbiome, the power of the gut microbiome to heal patients is just amazing. I'm really thrilled to hear this and I cannot wait to, talk about even more interesting topics, disease specific in the
Well,
next
thank
podcast.
you, and I look forward to more sessions with you, Rashmi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope everybody got a good insight about the practical aspects of the gut microbiome. So, the gut microbiome is a very important organ that we have. It's our invisible organ. So, I think whatever we heard from Dr. Abhay Chopra was really eye opening, and how that impacts how we live our daily lives, how we get ourselves rid of diseases, stay disease free is really going to change if we know about the gut microbiome. I think this should ring alarm bells for people who are obsessed with too much hygiene. If we are seeing young people with ulcerative colitis, children with diseases like this, it should be ringing alarm bells. We need to do a lot more about the gut microbiome. This is why we need to have everybody educated about different aspects of the gut microbiome. So, we will be talking about irritable bowel disease in our next podcast. Don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.